Hey everybody, Bradley Benner with Semantic Mastery for another Tuesday edition of Hump Day Hangouts. Because of it being New Year's Eve tomorrow, I wanted to kind of get this out of the way today. So we've got a lot of questions already that were posted on the event page, plus some questions that were sent to me privately that I'm going to answer today as well. So we got a lot to cover. I'm not going to waste a lot of time in introductions and all that kind of stuff. But I do want to say that Adam is on again today, helping me out with production stuff. So Adam, say what's up.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
All right, so we got let's see, Alex is here. Alex, I'm going to answer your question probably first to jump right into that. So let me do that now because you posted a question, several questions. So let me make sure I've got this correct. He says, had a couple of questions regarding the video syndication. I have created a branded network with all the links and social accounts. I also added second tiers to the Web 2s, and my question is, what is the best way to increase page rank to all the URLs? GSA links? Yeah, we're going to cover that in the advanced strategy webinar that we're going to have probably the 3rd or 4th week in January. It will be in January. Again, the official launch is next Tuesday, the 6th. And so I'm going to wait probably about 3 weeks beyond that and do an advanced strategy. However, I will cover that very briefly right now because I don't want you to have to wait until then. So, but I don't want to create a bunch more questions than what I answer here. So I'm going to try to keep this brief and light. And then Alex, like I said, since you got in so early, if you need to schedule a one-on-one session with me or something where I can get into a little bit more of this with you, I wouldn't mind doing that. But if otherwise, we'll keep it to the advanced strategy webinar that we're going to hold at the end of January. But to give you just a heads up, you guys are seeing my screen, correct? Somebody?
Yeah, looking good.
Okay. All right. This is the image showing basically tiered network structure, but it just even if all you have is tier 1 networks, I would suggest this. Yes, GSA is what I use. Okay. I use that in FCS Networker. FCS Networker is another web. It's basically a Web 2.0 program like GSA, except it builds links onto Web 2.0 sites, like all bookmarking in Web 2.0 sites, instead of like with GSA, will go out and find link targets all over the place. Let's see, I'm sorry, I'm getting messaged by one of my partners. Anyways, so typically what I would suggest doing, depending on what your target or your trigger channel is, if you're using your YouTube channel as your trigger, okay, then your tier 1 properties, you can get away with a hell of a lot more. Okay, so you can actually GSA directly to them, and this is with me assuming you guys know how to use GSA. This is not a training course on GSA, and I cannot give that to you because I actually don't even know how to use GSA myself. I have a tool manager that does that for me. Okay, so I have somebody that manages GSA for me. However, I know enough to know that if your tier 1 sites are pointed to a money site, so a website, you've got to be a hell of a lot more careful. And I would not suggest running GSA unless you're an advanced user to your tier 1 sites. Okay, let me rephrase that. I would not suggest running GSA links to your tier 1 properties if it's tier 1 if your trigger is a money site, unless you're an advanced user. Okay, because it can get you into trouble unless you know what you're doing. That said, if it's a YouTube channel as your trigger, then yes, you can GSA those properties. However, I suggest that you would do only to your second tier properties. So in other words, if you have a secondary network or a second tier networks, that you GSA those, and the page authority will build through those back to your tier 1 properties. It's just cleaner that way. Again, unless you're an advanced user, you can get yourself into trouble. So I would suggest that you try to keep it 2 steps away from your money site. But again, with YouTube, you can get away with a lot more. I don't know how long that will last though, and I'm trying to set you guys up for longevity as well. I hope that makes sense. Like I said, I don't want to get too advanced into that today because we will have an advanced strategy session at the end of January. Sorry, guys, I'm kind of scattered. I got a ton of questions to get through today. Try to get very quickly. Okay, what is the best? Let's see. I did a quick test and I managed to rank a number of videos. I thought it was great, and then I looked at one of my regular YouTube accounts and tried to rank for the same terms, and it also ranked right beside my other videos. In some cases, it actually ranked higher. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Yeah, Alex, you're in Greece, I believe, right? So I can't speak on ranking in the the Google Greece. I honestly don't know. I know that the strategies that I teach works incredibly well, or that we teach works incredibly well for the for Google.com, the U.S. market, which is what I'm in. But it should be the same. They should be the strategies are still the concepts are still the same. In fact, what I would suggest, and I've had that happen to me here in the U.S., where I've ranked videos with my syndication networks, and then I've done it with tests, because I do a ton of testing for everything, and I've had some videos that didn't have any syndication networks at all, but they ranked equally as well, if not better. But where I found that the syndication networks, where the real benefit is in that case, is the stick power, like how long they stick on page one. And you might not have even ranked to page one yet. Give it time. Especially if they're new networks. I was chatting with one of the other members, which I've got a ton of questions to get through from him as well, Jeff, and he was saying that that he actually did really well with his first network, ranking a video, and that was one video into one new network. Once you've had some activity on your network, so you've uploaded more videos, the frequency of publishing and the age of the channel and the networks themselves will also increase the power. So in other words, over time, with more activity and more time, your networks will increase power too. So Alex says that was my next question, how well they stick. Awesome, makes sense. Yeah, and again, Alex, I can't speak for Google.com or Google Greece, whatever that extension is. I can't speak for that because I don't know, but the concept should be the same. So although it may not have ranked as high initially, I think give it some time, it will, and when it does, it will stick, probably a lot longer than your video that did not go across a network does. And again, also when you're dealing with a brand new network, guys, it does take some aging and some activity before it's really gains the authority and the power that these networks can have. So I want to kind of make that clear. If you guys create a brand new network, most of the time, if you're picking long tail keywords, it's going to rank anyways, right? But when you start to get some activity onto that network and some age, then it builds authority very, very quickly, especially if you interlink all your properties the way we teach. And that's going to give your network more power and more juice, which means they'll rank higher and they'll stick longer. Okay? So just keep that in mind. Okay. Let's see. Took this off the page. Thought more. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Squat training program Greece is a keyword. If you check Google.gr, that's the extension. One personal account is Christina, ranking higher than my. I'm sorry, guys, if I'm reading too quickly. Don't understand why. I was under the impression that these networks had much stronger power. Okay, I just answered that. Yeah, give it some time. Add some authority to your channel, which will happen with just plain activity. Okay. Let me jump into the Q&A box real quick. I want to see if anything popped up. Links. Let's see, links. Is that a question? All right, let me jump back into the other questions that I got. Okay, Jeff Mountain, he asked a bunch of really good questions, so I'm going to start right there. And I spent an hour in Skype with Jeff last night answering a lot of these questions, but a lot of them are great questions that other people will have. Oh, by the way, before I go any further, let me grab the screen real quick, guys, and I do want to show you that I have added, and based on the Skype session I had with Jeff last night, inside the members area, which you guys can see right here, I added some additional training videos to clear up some of the questions that Jeff brought up, and I'm glad that he brought these up, because if it was unclear to him, it was probably unclear to others. So I put a video right here called Points to Consider. It's on the page for IFTTT Overview. For those of you that have purchased the course, I just want to make sure, because if you've already gone through the training, these videos were just added last night. But I put a Points to Consider video here, and I put a list of the network sites and any optional sites that we can also use in these networks, that some of them are covered. For example, Reading Pack and Storify, they already have videos over here, okay? But let me jump onto one of those too. If I clicked on the Reading Pack now, you can see that I put a video, added it up here last night called Reading Pack is Optional, and I explain why this is optional. There has been a change in Reading Pack recently, and they're terminating accounts very easily now. and it's a low domain authority site. It's one of the lowest domain authority sites, if not the lowest, that we use in the IFTTT networks. So because of that, it's kind of a pain right now. I'm not using this at the moment because my accounts are being terminated. So I just kind of basically turned off that recipe in my, the networks, and then I'm just leaving it off for now. Maybe in a month or two, we can go back and try them again and see if they work. But because it was a lower domain authority site, it's not that big a deal if it does not get used. Obviously, the more sites, the better, but I'm not going to lose sleep over Reading Pack not working. So it's optional. You guys, just want to make you aware of that. Also, Storify. Storify is also optional, and I explain why in this video. Storify is incredibly powerful, but there is a manual element to Storify, and I'm not going to go into too in depth right now because you can watch this video. But when you syndicate content to Storify using IFTTT, it does not auto-publish on Storify. What it does is it goes into this what's called the storyboard, which are essentially saved elements. They're story elements that are saved that you can use when you go to create a post manually in Storify. You can just grab the element, drag and drop from your storyboard. And again, I show exactly what I'm talking about in this video. If you're only managing a couple networks, I suggest that you take the time to manually post in Storify. It literally is drag and drop. It just takes a second to do it. Or you can hire a VA to do it. If you're going to do it, if you're managing more than just a handful, of networks, then I suggest you just skip it. And typically that's what I do. Now for tier 1 sites, for tier 1 networks or branded networks for main websites, yeah, okay, thanks Adam, I'll check that out. For tier 1 branded, so for example, with client websites, when I'm using the IFTTT networks to syndicate client website content, okay, those I have a VA go in and do the manual posting. They just go in once per week and they do the manual postings. But for my video syndication networks where I have them stacked and I have sometimes dozens of networks, I just don't take the time to do that because there's just too, we're looking for speed, guys, and automation, right? So it depends on what your strategy is, whether you want to use that or not. So I just want to make that clear. I put in those two as optional videos. And also, there are a few other sites that are optional, which I don't have videos for yet, but I will get those added. Facebook pages, LiveJournal, and Pinboard. Okay, so they're not in here yet. Don't flood me with a bunch of questions saying, well, I'm not seeing videos yet. I will get some videos added showing how to set those up and how to use those and where to use those. Okay. All right, so let me jump back over. 1 second. Thanks, Ken. Ken says he bought the program. Lots of great nuggets. I appreciate that. Can I use HMA for proxies instead of the proxies you recommend? Been using HMA for account creation for years. Ken, if you've used it and you've been successful with it, then by all means continue using it. I personally do not like hide my ass for Google accounts because Google has, basically cataloged a lot of those proxies, although they probably change often. I don't know. I've heard a lot of things about HMA with Google accounts, so I personally do not use them. But I am not here to tell you that if it has been working, not to use them. That is one other question that I can cover right here, guys. So Ken, yeah, by all means, if it's working for you, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Personally, I don't use hide my ass, and I do want to cover that as well. There are people. I've gotten a lot of questions about proxies, guys. The first video under using and verifying proxies, I talk about why to use proxies, and Sandra, I think she had a question regarding proxies too. So yeah, she did. Sandra Walsh had a question about that. So I'll answer both of these questions right now. If hide my ass is working, guys, like I said, go ahead and use that. Personally, I like to use easy proxies, which are IP authenticated private proxies. By the way, always go for private proxies for this. Do not use shared proxies or even semi-shared proxies. The reason I say that is because a lot of those times people will be, using them for spam tools and stuff like that, and it will cause you problems. So go with dedicated or private proxies. Okay. I like easy proxies because you can use IP authentication, which if you're using VAs in the Philippines, they're going to have most of the time dynamic IPs on their local machine, which means they're going to have to update those often. And I like using easy proxies because I just give them access to the control panel for the proxy that's called the proxy control panel, and they can update their IPs daily in there. And I happen to really like easy proxies. Also, there's buyproxies.org. I know a lot of you guys have used that. A lot of the students inside Semantic Mastery use those. I stopped using buyproxies.org because I had some issues with them, but a lot of our members still use them, and they say they work just fine. So I did put a link here to buyproxies.org. Just once again, please make sure you're using dedicated proxies and not shared or semi-shared. And lastly, there's HTTP proxies. Those are used differently than what you would. You don't need Foxy proxy really to use those. They're actually proxies that you would you add to the Firefox browser. You can also add them to Proxy Tool, which is also covered over here in the setup. But they're used differently, okay? And I really do like these because they're cheap and they're more like permanent proxies. A lot of these proxy providers will change your proxies every 30 days. With newipnow.com, you can buy a handful of proxies and you get to keep them. And honestly, you don't need to change your proxies all that often. You just need to cycle through them. So, for example, if you get 10 proxies, you could create 2 or 3 Google accounts per proxy in one day. So 2 or 3 Google accounts today on one proxy using the same proxy. That's fine. There's no problem with that. And then tomorrow do another proxy, the following day another proxy. So it'll be 11 days before you get back to that first proxy again, and then you could create 2 or 3 more accounts on that. That's fine. I have no problem with that, and it should not cause you any problems. If you want to be extra safe, then I wouldn't create more than 2 accounts per proxy per day. Okay, but I've gotten away with 4 or 5 in a day and not had any problems with it. Okay, so that's gonna Jeff. I'm going to answer the rest of your questions, but I want to answer Sandra's as well, because she says she is totally confused when it comes to using proxies. I've never used them, and there's a lot of conflicting info out there. Let's keep this incredibly simple, Sandra. The only reason why you need to use proxies in the IFTTT network setup is for creating Google accounts, as far as I'm concerned. And some people might want to argue with me about, well, you need it for your WordPress and Tumblr and all that. If you're creating dozens of accounts on the same platform per day, then yes, you're going to need proxies. But generally, again, these are manually created accounts, right? So, and that's why I suggest that you guys hire VAs to do this, virtual assistants to do this, because it's time consuming. Go through the process, learn how to do it once or twice on your own, and then pay somebody else to do it from that point forward. But these accounts have a high stick rate, okay? When you're using tools to mass create accounts, you need proxies. And they create spammy accounts. They're not interlinked properly. They don't generally, unless you go in afterwards and complete the bio and add the profile photos and all that, they generally don't do all that. They don't interlink to the other properties. The reason why these work so well is because they're manually created. And because they're manually created, we generally don't create more than maybe 2 accounts per any platform in one day. So 2 Google accounts, 2 Tumblr accounts, 2 Blogger accounts. Remember, guys, I have full-time salaried VAs that are on staff, work 40 hours a week, right? 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And this is all they do is build networks. And my best VAs can build 2 full networks in an 8-hour period. And that's all they do. So they're very efficient at it. So they're only creating 2 Google accounts per day or 2 Tumblr accounts per day, 2 Twitter accounts per day. You guys get the idea. And because of that, they need a new proxy daily, right? They need 1 new proxy daily. So to answer Sandra's question, if you're creating accounts en masse, yes, you need proxies. For what we do, you really only need the proxies for the Google account. And the reason why is because Google will track your IP, and if you are creating 2 accounts per day in Google every single day, they're going to flag you for basically spam accounts. But if you switch them out through proxies, I haven't had a problem with WordPress, or Tumblr or Twitter. Haven't had a problem with those. The only time that I need to use the proxies is for the Google accounts themselves. So other people might have some different experiences, but I'm just telling you what works for my business, and that's the using the proxies for the Google accounts. So that said, anytime the VA needs to go into one of the accounts, log into one of the accounts that they created, they just clear their cache, clear their cookies. They run CCleaner, which is all that's in here in the setup, the videos for that. They run CCleaner, then they enable a proxy, and then they log into the Google account. Okay. A lot of the times, if they're just going into WordPress or Tumblr or Blogger or Delicious or not Blogger because that's a Google account, but Delicious or Digo or something like that, they'll just log in with whatever proxy is currently active. So it's not necessary to track which proxy is which. That's another question I got from Jeff Mountain, was a question about Do we need to log which IP we created the account with and always log back in with that IP? Well, no, and the reason why is because you're never, especially if you've got a proxy service that switches proxies every 30 days, you're not going to have that proxy in 30 days. With new IP now, HTTP proxies, you can do that. And that, yeah, if you want to go through that extra hassle, you certainly can. But the way I look at it is, as long as you're logging in through a proxy and not your local machine, right? That's all that really matters. So that's why I also talk about setting up an account recovery email. So whether it's Outlook or Yahoo, or if you're using a webmail account, which I suggest if you're doing these networks for websites, that you create a webmail account and you use those as the account recovery email, because if you log in through another proxy and it flags your account to verify your account, you can, if you have an account recovery password or set up an account recovery email set up, then you can usually recover it through that recovery email. Sometimes it requires a phone number, and that's why I've also suggested that you can set up a Google Voice number. I hope that wasn't too confusing. I know there's a lot of questions about proxies, so let's see, how many accounts can you get out of a set of proxies before they burn out? Like I said, Ken, if you cycle through them, I haven't had problems with getting dozens and dozens of accounts through proxies. Again, I use HTTP proxies on my local machine, and I have some proxies that I've had for months and months and months, and I can't tell you how many accounts I've created. It's just a matter with how frequent it depends on how frequently you're creating accounts with that proxy. If enough time has lapsed between new accounts being created, then I think you can recycle them over and over again. There may be some threshold, I just don't know what it is, if that makes sense. Let's see, that was Sandra. She said thanks for answering her questions about proxies. Yeah, Sandra, I hope that was clear. I didn't want to confuse you. I wanted it to be, try to clear that up, because I do get questions about that a lot. So if you have any additional questions, please post them, and I'll try to clear them up as well. Okay, Jeff says, is there any written version of the material covered in the videos? In the videos, a specific Trello board was mentioned, but I couldn't find the address or anything directing to it anywhere. Yeah, in the points to consider video that I added last night, I mentioned that. I use Trello internally for project management. It's a project management application. It's incredibly effective, very, very useful, and it's a great way to manage outsourcers, and I use that internally, and I probably mentioned it in the boards, in the videos, and I did not mean to. So if there's any, we have a done-for-you outsourcer training portal, which gives you access to those training, the Trello boards, so that essentially you can hand them over to an outsourcer, and they'll have all the videos plus the Trello boards, which are step-by-step instructions, written instructions on how to build these networks. That's only available to the Semantic Mastery Mastermind members, okay? When we launch next week, we will be offering kind of as like a downsell or whatever, the availability to purchase just the done-for-you outsourcer training. But right now, that is reserved specifically only for Mastermind members. So if it was mentioned in the videos, it was unintentional. But again, Trello is just a project management application. It's a very, very effective and efficient way to run a team of outsourcers. Even to manage your own projects, guys. If you're a solo act, if you use Trello, you will get so much more organized. Okay, so I can't recommend that highly enough. And again, if you guys want to get access to the done-for-you outsourcer training, you certainly can, but you need to be a Mastermind member for that. Frequently, there's a mention of 10 proxies to choose from. That was probably me talking to an outsourcer. I would suggest that you get proxies, like I said, a minimum of 10 guys. It depends on how many networks you're going to build. If you're just building a few networks, you don't need that many. And you can buy, I think, just 2 IPs from newipnow.com. I think you can get like as small as 2 there, but a lot of the other places you get like 5 or 10. But if you're going to be building bunches of networks, which I suggest you do, you might as well get a handful of them. So no, I'm sorry, we cannot provide proxies, guys, but there are links to do them, and they're rather inexpensive. Unless I overlooked it somehow, I couldn't find any demo of the proper creation of Dropbox, Box, or OneDrive accounts. Jeff is very, very observant. At the time of recording the videos for the training, guys, I was testing those cloud storage accounts, Dropbox, Box, and OneDrive as additional syndication properties, but I couldn't get them to work right. So all mention of them had been removed, except for in the training videos. You may see in the spreadsheet a line on my spreadsheet for those, but they have been removed. Any single property that I suggest using are going to be listed in the IFTTT overview right here, okay? So if it's not listed here, we don't use it, okay? And there's a reason why, because I tested them and they don't work. They don't work right. Now, if any one of you decides that you want to test them and you find a workaround to get them to work properly, please, by all means, submit a support ticket, which, by the way, support.semanticmastery.com. Let us know, and that way, you know, tell us what your method is, and I'll do a video on it and give you credit for discovering how to make it work, okay? I actually would appreciate that. So you guys are welcome to help at any time, and I will give you credit for it. So Jeff says, I get the entire process of cleaning your browser and everything, but I'm wondering if you need to always ensure that you log into a specific Google account from the same IP all the time. No, I answered that. I don't worry about that. It's too difficult. If you're really paranoid, then yes, do that. But otherwise, just you know, as long as you're not logging in with your local IP. When creating a WordPress.com page, I found that anytime I tried to link to anything outside of WordPress, the blog got shut down immediately. I tried this multiple times with the same results every time. The only way I could get the blog to stick was to create a unique post and link a related post to another WordPress blog. The only time I've ever had trouble with WordPress terminate. Now, remember, these are Web 2 accounts. And again, I mentioned this also in the points to consider video, guys. You know, Web 2 accounts, sometimes they just decide to go on an account termination rampage, and you get caught up in it, and there's nothing you can do about it. Things change from time to time. Generally, I have not had trouble creating WordPress.com accounts with them getting terminated. If you add content the way that I show you, which would be to find a really highly popular post, you can add it and just give an attribution link back to that source, and then also a link back to another WordPress, another post on a WordPress.com site. I haven't had any problems with that. The only times I've ever had any problems is when I've had proxy issues, where I was using a proxy that had been flagged for some reason or another, and I changed the proxy and I was okay. However, that said, I'm not saying you did not experience that trouble. Sometimes things like that will happen, and if your workaround, Jeff, was to post only a unique post related to another WordPress blog, that's noted, and if anybody else is having that trouble, just let me know, and maybe I could do an update video describing exactly what he said here worked, okay? Because I want this to work for you guys. If there's any problems, let us know, and if we see that it's a pattern and there's a workaround for it, we'll certainly update the training. Let's see. With the above in mind, I created a WordPress blog using the Yahoo account. What are the implications of this? No implications at all. That's fine. It doesn't matter which account, email account you use. I just always use the Gmail account typically, okay, unless I'm doing it for a website, in which case I always use a webmail account to create all of the accounts, okay. There's a few other questions coming in. We're running out of time, guys, because we got the members-only webinar coming up, so I'm going to try to run through these very quickly and answer the last few. When changing settings on Buffer, I noticed that if you change the schedule and time zone before adding the Google Plus page, you have to redo them all over again. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I didn't know that. So that's a good tidbit. I might actually copy that and post that underneath the video then for Buffer, because that's pretty good to know. He's saying that just to save a little bit of time, you want to add the G Plus page first before changing the time zone and everything, and that's pretty cool. So thanks for that, Jeff. I can't get Storify and Reading Pack recipes to work properly either. I just addressed that, and I put videos in the training area about that. Storify, there's a manual action. Reading Pack, they're being jerks right now. So just keep that in mind. They're optional at this point. Now that I have the system set up, what do I do? Advanced strategy training. Also, go through the webinar we had last week, guys. I talked about strategy specifically last week, but we're going to have an advanced strategy session at the end of January, and you guys will get pretty much ways to monetize. All right, let me jump into the last few questions, and we've got to wrap it up. Sorry I didn't take a lot of live questions today, guys. We had a lot of people post, so let's see. We get the links again. It's funny. Somebody keeps posting links. I'm not quite sure what that means, but are tiered networks more effective for video syndication for smaller networks, or is it better to build out 3 or 4 networks all syndicated to the same YouTube channel? Or all syndicated, I guess, from the same YouTube channel. Let's see, are tiered networks more effective for video syndication for smaller networks, or is it better to syndicate from the same channel? It depends. The tiered networks, guys, that using tiered networks, there is mostly effective for stick rate, okay, and for more competitive terms. And generally, you're gonna see results that are slower. They're not instant results. For faster results, more tier one networks would generally give you faster results. And that's not always the case, guys. Remember this. There's a random ranking factor that applies here, okay, with everything that we do. So sometimes you'll have incredible success, and other times it's gonna be a bit of a dogfight, and that's normal. But what I found is that you get quicker, usually initial results with more tier one networks, so essentially syndicating directly to a property, right? So you get a backlink and or embed. With tier two networks, however, I've noticed, and tier three, so tiered networks, when you go to multi-tiered networks, or multi-tiered syndication, I should say, it's generally a slower process for them to rank, but they stick like incredibly well. And even more, the more competitive terms, within a few weeks, it can take sometimes as much as 30 days to see a video rank, but a lot of the times it will end up ranking and it will stick for a lot longer. I've got videos that have been there for over 12 months on page one that I've done absolutely nothing else to since syndicating across tiered network structures. Okay. Something else that we're going to cover possibly next week, because we're about out of time today, guys, is talking about advanced indexing. Part of the Advanced RSS Academy training, which will be included, that I plan on having that available in the training area by January 6th, which is next Tuesday. Okay, so I'm going to work on that over the next few days and get that uploaded. But that's going to help a lot with indexing, because remember, Web 2s take a long time to get indexed. By the way, that's something else that you might want to check, Alex. Check to see if your Web 2s have been indexed, not the posts themselves, because chances are most likely they are not indexed. But let me just show you what I mean by that. Like, for example, if you want to go to google.com and put in the site operator, okay, and then you would put in your domain, your WordPressblog.com, so whatever that may be. So, for example, I have one that's bradleybenner.wordpress.com, right? And so if you hit that, you'll see whether it's indexed or not, and it will show you how many posts are indexed on that WordPress.com site. And chances are, if it's a new network, the only thing that's going to be indexed is your homepage and not the actual individual posts. Okay, and you'll see that as those individual posts start to index, you'll start to see your rankings improve for your videos too. And so, with the advanced RSS strategy that or academy training that is going to be added to the members area by next week, that's going to help with a lot of that. It's going to get those to index a hell of a lot quicker, which means you'll see faster results. Okay, but also in maybe next week during the Hump Day Hangout or during the advanced strategy, at some point, guys, over the next few weeks, I'm going to talk about some advanced indexing stuff that requires additional money, like purchasing a subscription to an indexing service. And there's some premium plugins that you can use on a WordPress site, a self-hosted WordPress site, that will help with indexing. Some different strategies and tactics that I use in addition to the IFTTT networks that would just kind of supercharge everything. Okay, so we'll cover that as well. All right, guys. I'm gonna limit to the last questions here on this page, and that's it. I've got to wrap it up because we're a little bit over, and we got a members only webinar today too. But we'll be back next Wednesday, guys. So please, by all means, feel free to post your questions on the next event page, and I'll cover them then. Okay, and next week we can go a little bit longer. Okay, so let's see. Scott says, "Hi Bradley, thanks for answering my earlier questions. So a long story short, I copied the page with the funny long URL, then changed." Oh, I'm sorry, Scott. That's not really related to this. Reach out to me privately, Scott, or if you join the mastermind, which I sent you the information on earlier, you're welcome to ask any question you want in the mastermind, and I'll give you full attention there. Okay. So sorry about that, Scott. I will answer your question just at a later date for this. Another problem for Google, Sandra says, another problem for Google accounts is that if they want you to telephone verify now. Yeah, that's covered in the training, Sandra. That is in the, let's see, persona and Google accounts. Phone verify Google accounts using CallFire right here. Oh, you guys aren't seeing my screen. I'm sorry. Let me show my screen. Okay. So in the Persona and Google Accounts training page, you're going to see that the second video is about phone verifying Google accounts using CallFire. Guys, if you're in the U.S., you can also use Twilio. I just don't know how to use Twilio. I've always used CallFire, so that's what I did a training video on. There's some of you that use Twilio already. If somebody wants to cut a video on how to use Twilio and send it to me, I'd be happy to add it to this training. I just personally don't use it, so I just always use CallFire.
I think part of her issue is that she's not located in the U.S.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, again, my virtual assistants, they do the accounts for me now, anyways, and they use SIM cards, which I guess are like phone cards that you can buy at convenience stores and things like that, and that's how they do it. And it actually only costs pennies in the Philippines to do it that way. So I don't know I guess she's in France. That's right. I knew that. I don't know if they have SIM cards in France, but you might want to try that method. And I've got right here links to some Google Docs that will show you how to use SIM cards. I'm pretty sure it would probably be the same no matter where you're located, at least as far as the concept. Okay. Let's see. I can't get Google Voice here in France. I need to find another solution. Yeah, try SIM cards. I don't know what else to say. If somebody else has any solutions for France, if you're watching this, if you want to send some suggestions, I'd be happy to answer that. I honestly don't know. So, okay, let's see if there's anything else here because we got to wrap it up. Let's see. Nope, there's not. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you all being here. I'm sorry it was so quick, fast-paced today. We've got a lot to cover. But again, next week we can be a little bit more, take a little bit more time. If you guys have any additional questions, I'll be happy to answer them next week. Just post on the next events page. I'll probably send out the invitation for next week's event tomorrow, so it'll give you plenty of time to add your questions ahead of time. And I certainly appreciate it. And anybody finds anything that they could make as suggestions between now and next Tuesday, please let me know, because I'd be happy to take those suggestions and try to implement that some way to clear it up. I want this to be as clear as possible for you guys, because I don't want any confusion at all. Go out and make some money with it. That's really the name of the game. So appreciate you guys being here. We'll see you all next week.